Hello, Dawn Moore, Legence Title Company. Last week I began a series of videos on the new 1-to-4 family residential contract changes that were approved at the last month's commission meeting. This new contract will be mandatory for your use as of June 1st. Last week's video I covered the changes on page 1 of the contract. This week, I want to discuss one of the more substantive changes to your contract, and one that requires a little bit more education to the practitioner. Paragraph 6A8 of the contract addresses the standard printed exception in a title policy as to items that may be shown on a survey, such as discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area or boundary lines, encroachments or protrusions, or overlapping improvements. This standard exception, however, can be amended upon payment of an additional premium in the amount of 5% of the owner title policy cost and review of the survey to delete any of those general exceptions as to discrepancies, conflicts, encroachments or protrusions, or overlapping improvements. The title company will not ensure area calculation, not unlike your duty to be careful not to represent square footage of a piece of property. This amendment of the general exception, however, is subject to any specific exceptions the survey shows as to these matters. If the survey shows that a neighbor's fence encroaches on the insured's property, the title policy will accept to any claims that may arise as a result of that. Our new contract requires you to negotiate up front whether the buyer will get this coverage or not, and who will pay the cost of this coverage. Prior to this change, it was optional for the buyer and at buyer's cost. That left it up to the escrow officer to explain it and offer it to the buyer at closing. However, if your escrow officer did not explain it, it was never addressed. Now it will be your responsibility to negotiate this coverage at the outset. With the new change, it is important that the licensee understands this coverage, its cost and benefits. So what does this insurance cover? This insurance covers any losses the insured may have because of claims made by third parties to the insured's land by virtue of any discrepancies, conflicts, encroachments or protrusions or overlapping improvements not shown on the survey and accepted to in the policy. The coverage extends to the payment of any legal cost to defend the claim and cost to clear title, or payment to the insured for loss of title. What are some examples of claims? One example may be a claim made by adverse possession. If, for example, the neighbor's fence encloses a portion of the insured's property such that the enclosure is exclusive to use by the neighbor, and that fence has been there for a certain period of time, most often 25 years, then the neighbor may have acquired the property of the insured by adverse possession. The length of time for acquiring adverse possession runs with the land and not with the owner. So it doesn't matter that the neighbor just bought that land. The time for running depends on how long that fence has been located in that location. If then my insured survey did not reveal this encroachment, and the neighbor asserts a claim to that property, if the coverage has been acquired and paid for, the title company will be responsible for defending that claim of the neighbor and paying to clear any title issues. If title issues cannot be cleared, then the title company will owe the insured the loss of that title. Another example of a claim is when there are discrepancies in boundary lines. Discrepancies in boundary lines happen from time to time, but hopefully they are discovered before closing and the title curative work can be done prior to getting to the closing table. However, when it is not discovered prior to closing, this issue can be quite costly to clear, particularly when the insured is trying to build or improve the property he just bought. It will be a benefit to that buyer to have the title policy cover that claim and pay any costs for curing that discrepancy. The follow-up question I get to this discussion is, if the insurance covers only matters that are not revealed on the survey, but should have been, why doesn't the insured have recourse against the surveyor? Why does he have to pay for additional insurance coverage? There may be some recourse against the surveyor, but it is very limited. And sometimes there is an argument as to the survey's accuracy. One of the most interesting things I learned upon entering this business was that you can get two different surveys on the very same property. This is easier to understand why when you know that a surveyor is only required on residential surveys to find one monument or one iron pin, and then he can run the meets and bounds and directions called for in the plat and set the other three corners. Over time, different corners are found by different surveyors, so variations happen. The title insurance will come in and pay any legal costs to defend the accuracy of the survey and thus your right to title, or pay to get title cleared. The surveyor's E&O insurance will only pay once it is established that the survey is incorrect. Moreover, the insured will not have recourse against the surveyor's E&O if the buyer has relied on an existing survey. The cost to amend this general exception is minor in comparison to its benefits. For example, on a $250,000 home, the cost for this coverage is $85.30. The reason the cost is so low is because there are very few claims under this coverage. However, if your insured is the one to have a claim, the cost for not having this coverage is quite high. In my opinion, the benefits of this coverage greatly outweighs the cost. The new contract requires you to negotiate up front who pays for this coverage. On commercial transactions, the sellers usually pay for this coverage for the buyer. However, let me reiterate, irrespective of who pays for this coverage, it is, in my opinion, a benefit to the buyer that exceeds the cost. I hope this video will help you explain this coverage as you negotiate this new provision in your contract. Of course, Allegiance Title stands ready, willing, and able to answer any questions you or your clients may have. We are your resource for results. Thank you.